to NMP Talk Show, where we delve into the depths of mental health wellness with compassion, understanding, and expertise. Our goal is to provide a safe space for open conversations about mental health, destigmatize the issues surrounding it, and offer insights and resources to support your journey towards a healthier mind and soul.
Welcome to NMP Talk Show, and today we are joined by a special guest from Western Australia. The Aussie is in the house, and her name her name is Jeanelle Classen, and today we're going to talk about burnout and the toxic workplace, how we can deal with it. But before we indulge into the topic, I just want her to introduce herself and there's some qualities or something that we here in South Africa can relate with her, and she's gonna tell us just now. Janelle, welcome to the show.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Neo. It's exciting to be here. Like you said, my name is Jeanelle. I'm a registered nurse. I currently live in Western Australia, but I was born in South Africa, grew up there, only moved here when I was 16. So I am South African by blood. But yeah, I'm excited to be here, and let's talk about burnout. I've got my whole journey, and I'm sure we're going to get into it very, very soon.
Oh, that's awesome. Tell me, is the food cuisine very different from South Africa? There?
I would say that it's more bland.
Uh,
Yeah. Aussies don't
okay.
know flavor.
Okay. Better
You
come
have
back
to
home.
oh, I know, right? Spice. You need spice and herbs. You need it.
Yeah. Oh, shame. All right. Now we got all of them here. We got all of them
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Yes. So, Janelle, I'm so delighted that you honored this invitation. And the reason why I'm so delighted is we've been having shows about burnout. I mean, this is not the first time we're having a show about burnout. And we were talking on how to deal with it, seeking counsel, seeking professional help. And what excites me about you is that you are that other part that we go to when we're seeking help, and we're going to concentrate on how we can help, especially the career path that you have chosen, or those professionals to cope with it. And I'm so excited about them.
Yeah.
So our topic today is toxic culture and its relationship to burnout. So let's dissect this topic for a little bit. Understanding toxic culture. What defines a toxic workplace culture?
Yeah. So, I mean, most of what I'm going to be talking about is related to nursing, seeing as that's my experience, but it's certainly relatable to pretty much any other industry. It's just got the nursing label. So, one of the biggest things when it comes to a toxic culture is you tend to be breaking each other down. You've got a mismatch in your teamwork ability. You've got people complaining in an extreme matter. We all kind of have days where we just feel a bit down about our work, but when it's happening more often than not, and your main conversation is around either talking about someone else or talking about how you wish you weren't there, or it's there's a few layers to it, and we'll dissect it as we go through. But the main thing is that you're either breaking each other down, you're breaking yourself down, or you don't want to be there more often than not. And yeah, those are the couple of things that you'll start to notice as you pay more attention and as you become more aware about what's impacting you and how it's impacting you.
Yeah, awesome. So the signs
of toxic burnout or toxic culture and leading to burnout is, I know for my experience, I burnt out within 6 months of starting my nursing career. And the reason for that was partly because I started work right before the main wave of COVID hit, the very first one. So, you just get thrown into the deep end. Yes. Got thrown into the deep end. And so not just that, but also dealing with an already spread thin, burnt out work environment. And those two together was just setup for disaster, really.
Mm.
One of the things that happened, I started noticing that I wasn't sleeping, I wasn't eating well. I called in sick to work, not wanting to go because I felt anxious going into work, and felt, I'm losing my passion for my work, even though during my studies and going on to prac and things like that, I was like, I'm loving this is something I really enjoy. And before I went into full-time nursing, I was doing GP nursing and aged care nursing, which they're still full on, but I wasn't working full-time, I was working casually. So once I was in a full-time role, you deal with shift work, finishing work at 9, 9:30, 10 p.m. at night, and then being expected to be back at work at 6:30, 7 a.m., and then travel time, unwinding, all those things. You don't get much rest at all. And then we wonder why we're running on empty and why we're not coping. So, those are a couple things. Another few things that I noticed was that my personal relationships were breaking down, because I would come home and be like, no one talk to me, leave me alone, or you'd be, and this is when it comes to toxic culture, is you'd be hearing nurses talk to each other saying, oh, I can't wait for my glass of wine when I get home. I'm just going to be drinking. And it's like, it's a glass of wine that turns into a bottle of wine, turns into bottles of wine. So we've got a major drinking culture. And we commend that. We're like, oh yeah, you enjoy that, like you deserve it. It's like, no, that's not self-care. That's a coping mechanism.
Yeah. And a destructive one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's not sustainable. Yeah. And one thing that kind of that was the tip of the iceberg, the cherry on top, was I approached my clinical nurse educator and I said, I'm noticing these things in myself. How can I prevent becoming a bitter nurse? Because I was seeing nurses who had been nursing for 5, 10, 15 years, experiencing the same things that I was and worse. And I didn't want to end up there. And she turned around to me and said, get used to it. It's not going to change. That's when I knew there was no, something's up. And that's kind of what started me on my journey.
And that this disturbs your psychological makeup, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was so shocked. I was like, I'm coming to you asking for your help and you're telling me get used to it? No, surely not. I was in so much disbelief. I was fumbling over my words saying, do you want me to do a quality improvement project, which is it's like a mini research project that we do in nursing wards, usually for clinical care. But I was like, what if we did one for nurse burnout or shift worker syndrome? And she said, no, you've got too much on your plate already. You're only new. And, the type of person that I am, I wasn't going to let it lie. So I decided, you know what? I won't do it for you. I'll do it for me then. And so I did it in my private time, which it's led me on this journey of discovery. It opened my eyes to the absolute lack of resources there was that was tailored to the needs of nurses and shift workers. But it also led me on a path of discovering what does work and what doesn't work. Because I tried everything. Oh man, I tried everything.
You're the guinea pig.
About it, I tried it. Yes. Oh my goodness. Time, money, effort, it all went into that, and I finally discovered it. And I knew that I had discovered it. I had I was coping better when I was in a situation. Are you happy for me to share a story? I'm telling story after story.
Please go ahead. Go ahead.
I realized that I had kind of mastered the skill of dealing with the culture of, it's almost an apathetic culture. I sometimes say a toxic culture is also an apathetic culture because you don't have empathy for what's going on. You kind of get numb to it, or you think you get numb to it anyway. And so what happened is we were in ICU. I had just lost a patient. Well, not me, our team. We couldn't resuscitate this patient, and we cleared up the space, and I said to my nursing supervisor, I said, that was tough. When is our debrief? And she kind of looked at me in disbelief and said, I'm not going to do a debrief. We're at the end of our shift, and it's going to happen again, and we're so behind. There's no point. And I was like, If I didn't have the strategies to unwind, to think about, and have I done my everything? Like, have I given my all? Did I do my best? And if I did or didn't, why was that? And how do I cope with it? If I didn't have those things in place, I don't think I'd be nursing. I don't think I'd be nursing.
Not
I
at
would
all.
have been a blubbering mess. And so that's when I knew I needed to put this information into a book, into a resource. So that led me to writing my book, which is really exciting.
Oh, you also have a book.
Yes, yes.
You know, we do have a slot where we review books here. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, maybe we'll talk later about that
Yeah,
and see how
absolutely.
we can
I
do
surprised
that.
you with that one.
Yeah, you did, and it's a good surprise. I like it.
Oh dear.
Awesome. So now,
Yeah.
the impact on employees. I mean, you touched it so many times.
Mm.
How that impacts you, but in what ways does a toxic culture contribute to employees' burnout or
Yeah.
employee
Oh,
burnout?
yeah. Well, I mean, like I briefly touched on, when you're in a toxic environment, you become numb, or you think you become numb. And the reason why I say
Mm,
you think you become numb is because on the surface you think it's not affecting you anymore because you're so used to it.
mm,
And I'm talking about burnout and toxic culture here. So toxic culture can look like what that nurse supervisor told me of, like, get used to it, it's not going to change type of.
yeah.
Sorry, I've got a silly little fly flying around. So if I'm like dodging, it's because there's a fly. Anyways, um, back to the story. If it can look like that kind of like, get used to it culture, or attitude, or it could get even like when someone is snapping at you for what you think was nothing, especially in the high stress jobs like nursing or the medical field, or firefighters, police. I mean, I'm sure there are other high stress jobs, even chefs, like those are just a couple that come to mind. Is when you're under high stress and you are running low on energy and your bucket is empty. Of course you're not going to have patience, so you're going to be snapping
No.
at your coworkers, you're going to be making
Yeah.
mistakes, you're going to be fumbling. Those are some things, and so you think that that's normal because, oh, I'm in a high stress job. Or I know for me, I thought that the longer I'm in the industry, surely it'll get better. That's not the case. It doesn't
No.
get better
Gets
just because
worse.
you've got, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're just
Mm,
getting
mm,
deeper and deeper and deeper, and eventually you wonder, you get to a point where it's the tipping point, and you realize your personal relationships have fallen apart. The amount of divorce and separation in these high stress jobs is, it's insane.
mm,
Mental health concerns are at an all-time high, not just because of COVID, but because of the nature of the work.
mm,
There was a recent study published. Now I can't remember which country it was in, but they surveyed the level of burnout, or who has um, the percentage of nurses who have experienced burnout in their career.
mm.
3 or 4 years ago, so before COVID, that statistic was sitting at about 85%. It's now sitting at 93%. Yeah. So
Yeah.
93% of nurses have experienced symptoms of burnout in the last 2 to 4 years.
You know, whenever I have to go to hospital, maybe to check up on somebody, family or friend, and just myself walking into the ward, I instantly get depressed,
Mm,
you know, and looking at different people laying there sick with their various sicknesses, and I cannot imagine myself coming back every single day, working long hours, treating people with their sickness. It really needs passion. But
mm,
from what you just said, you may have passion, but that can also go away
mm,
because now when you reach in that state of burnout or being
mm.
burnt out, then you you
Yeah.
snap.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Yeah,
always say that's almost like that passion that you kind of
yeah,
lose.
yeah.
I It's almost like a fire, like your passion is a fire. And when you've just
Mm,
got toxic culture, you've got overworked, underappreciated, just all these things, general life stresses, just it's like just being thrown onto your fire. It just kind of dampens the fire, and it just kind of turns into this little coal, and eventually it's our job to kind of stoke that fire again and take
Mm.
away the things that are smothering the fire and let it burn again, let that passion reignite. Because if you don't have passion, then you become apathetic, you are more prone to burnout,
Yeah.
your mental health suffers. It's just a knock-on effect, a snowball effect. Yeah.
Mm, mm. So the psychological and physical symptoms.
Mm.
We our discussion it's more open.
Yeah.
We keep touching on these things, but I just want to highlight them.
Mm.
For our audience,
Mm.
that they do understand the gravity of burnout
Yeah.
and how they can recognize the symptoms.
Yeah.
So, what are the psychological and physical symptoms of burnout that would arise from a toxic work environment?
Yeah. I mean, physical, it's a lot easier to notice physical ones than it is
Mm.
psychological. For most people, uh, physical ones would be things like, I know for me, I was getting frustrated that I was gaining weight, even though I wasn't. I felt like I was busy all the time, and I didn't feel like I was eating too unhealthily. But then when I finally sat down, I was like, actually, I'm binge eating at the nurse's desk. I don't
Mm.
know. I can't remember from the rules in South Africa, but we're not allowed to be given any gifts other than food or like flowers on the ward. We're not allowed to be given any sort of monetary gifts or anything like. It has to be consumed, and you need to be able to share it with the rest of the ward. So not allowed to give individual gifts, like from the
Mm.
patients. And so that means more often than not, we get given chocolates or lollies. So then you're sitting at the nurse's desk and you're like, oh, I just need a quick little, like, yeah, absolutely. I just need a sugar rush. I need to just feel better about myself. Let me just eat another one and another one and another one. Or,
Yeah,
you're
it
on
doesn't
night
end.
shift. No, you're on a night shift and you're exhausted. So you're like, oh, I just need a sugar rush. Like, I'm bored.
Oh
um,
man.
I used to live off of six cups of coffee or tea per day. Yeah, I was like a jittery mess.
So if you don't have any, you shake,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. I was like, I was
Your
just,
body goes
yeah.
into a shock.
Oh, absolutely. And I was living off of this caffeine. And when I
Mm-mm.
finally cut cold turkey, I was getting proper withdrawals. I was shaky, headaches, grumpy. Now, these days, so this was about 3 or 4 years ago now, when
Mm.
I forget to order my decaf, I get shakes, headaches, I get grumpy. So now it's just, I need to make sure I've got my decaf.
Sure.
And so, what other physical symptoms, like we talked about our eating habits,
Mm.
talk about, it's like that stress eating. So that's more of a psychological thing leading into physical. Uh, you've got your lack of sleep, you're struggling to fall asleep, you're struggling to stay asleep. You feel like you even if you do sleep, you don't get good quality sleep. Like that's just the whole thing. um we tend to feel like we've got this to-do list that just never ends. um
Mm.
it's like, I just can't get stuff done. You feel like you're treading water, because you just feel so, you don't feel focused. Those are a lot of things. You just, whether you're at home or at work, you just can't focus. And then the psychological things you'll start noticing is, your relationships will start breaking down because you will want
Ooh.
to spend more time resting or just
Sleeping
being alone or sleeping,
or trying
and
to
you
sleep.
spend less time with your family, with your friends, start canceling social events, and you become isolated. And
Mm.
then you are bickering because everyone is stressed, everyone's running on empty, and that's a big one. Then you've got your mental illnesses, so depression, anxiety.
Mm.
Those are big ones where even in the nursing field, unfortunately I can't remember the statistics, but again, very high rate of suicide attempts,
Mm.
and successful suicide. So it's a serious thing that if you're not sleeping, if you feel like your world is falling apart, you don't know where to go. What are some other there's a bunch. It's serious stuff, and
Yeah.
it happens quickly, and often we don't realize it until we're in it.
Generally, you just got me worried there. Um, if you're a nurse or a doctor and you're depressed, what's going to happen to your patients?
Mm. Yep. Yep. It
You
leads
know,
into that for sure.
yeah. I mean, something just comes up on my mind. Um, 1 year, like a few years ago, I fell sick, and,
Mm.
and then I consulted with this particular doctor, and I was put on wrong medication for 2 years, and every 6 months it will be an incrementation of the doses.
Mm.
And I was just getting worse and worse to the point where I was shaking. I could not, you know, think about a 100-year-old. They can't sit still. They're all shaking. They can't
Yeah.
stand. That
Yeah.
was me then. Yeah.
Wow.
So now I'm thinking the doctor could have been depressed. I
Mm.
only found out later that he had lost his wife
Mm.
in death.
Mm. Mm.
So now he's dealing with the loss of a loved one.
Mm.
He's dealing with patients with various kind of diseases, and everyone needs their attention. I don't know
Yeah.
if he has children. If he
Mm.
did have or he has, they also needed his attention.
Yeah.
So that could be a lot for somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And
That's
and
yeah.
the worry now is um, the medical facilities. Would they not, spot you and say, today you don't look okay.
Mm.
Let's sit
Mm.
and
Mm.
talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I totally
Do
agree.
do do you have do we have such an arrangement?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you are struggling to deal with your personal life and you're having to
Yeah.
deal with people that's got illness or people that depend on you, whether that's your patients or your team members,
Mhm.
it definitely impacts your quality of work. When you are in a state of burnout, when you're in a toxic environment, you're not going to be able to focus. You're so
Mm.
much more prone to making mistakes. You're so much more likely to second guess yourself. And even if you tick all the previous boxes and that you haven't experienced them, you are so much more likely to have a lack of resilience or just kind of again have that apathetic approach that they call it, what is it called, compassion fatigue is a big one
Mm.
in the toxic culture, and it's almost like a a cycle. Is there's compassion fatigue, so it creates a toxic environment, and because there's a toxic environment, you've got compassion fatigue, and it's an on it goes. I was talking with someone a few weeks ago, and we were saying that it's almost like a rite of passage when there's a new nurse or a new blood that comes on the ward.
Mm.
You can kind of it's almost like your turn will come to be able to tell the next new nurse that this is just the way that it is, and it's
I
like,
must
oh
deal with it.
yeah, exactly. And it's just it's so sad, and it happens so often, that we just think that it's kind of like good luck, haha, sorry that you became a nurse kind of thing.
Chose the wrong field.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mm.
yeah, it's a real thing. Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's deal with organizational responsibilities.
Mm, yeah.
What role do leadership and management play in fostering or dismantling this toxic culture?
Yes, they play a very big role, and I'll tell you
Mm.
another story of what happened
Mm.
again within the first year of. So after I had that conversation with my clinical educator, and she gave me the answer that she did, a few weeks later, a few months later, obviously I was then kind of trying to figure out what's going to work. What am I finding as resources?
Mm.
And I decided to approach my nurse unit manager and ask her about her rostering choices. Often she would roster me on a late shift, so I finished 9:30, 10 p.m., early shift starting 6:30, 7 a.m. Late shift, early shift. And it's like, how am I supposed to have a
Rest.
life and rest, look after my family? Like, how? And she said, "Oh, it's about the skill mix." And I just thought, BS. I was like, you can organize a skill mix without doing that, because I wasn't the only one. And she said, oh, well, if you're struggling, then here's a card. You get 3 free counseling sessions.
Wow.
I was like, well, that's really nice.
Wow.
It's going to help me 3 times in my entire
3
nursing
times, you know?
career. Like, seriously?
Hold on. Is it only 3 times your entire career or 3 times a month?
Oh, no.
Oh, a
3
week.
I think it was like 3 times a year.
Oh, my word.
Yeah. Like, thank you. So, and that was the end of the conversation. And I think it just shows you, I think that she was, again, in herself, she was in a state of burnout where the best she could do was give me a card that said, here's 3 free counseling sessions. I mean, it's a nice thought, but it's really not going to make a difference, a lasting difference. It might patch up for a little while, but sooner than later.
It won't even start.
No.
I mean, it's something that you accumulated for many months.
Yeah.
3 sessions won't do.
No, exactly. We deal with trauma, we deal with abuse, we deal with, it's just so many things. We deal with the high stress. It's just one thing. It's just, you're piling it on. 3 sessions ain't gonna cut it. And so when I talk to people about the organizational responsibility, it goes right back to our nursing training. It goes right back to our training. I say self-care is a skill. You don't just know how to practice self-care. I was drilled into me, document. If you don't document, it didn't happen. And that's true. But then there's a PS of, oh, make sure you look after yourself. But know how to identify when you need it. Nothing like that. So I always say we need to learn the skill of self-care. And learning that from the get-go, learning that before you need it, is so much. Like, we learn our entire degree. We learn that prevention is better than cure for our patients. So why aren't we doing that for our nurses? And so it's my biggest dream, my biggest goal is to get this system. I call it the 6 steps to beating nurse burnout. That needs to be incorporated into our training, because you can nip it in the bud from the beginning. You're setting nurses up for success rather than shock and failure and giving up.
So have you had any success rate on that? Maybe the first question is, how long have you started doing this?
So that ICU incident, when I realized, hey, my system's working, I started sharing it with my colleagues, and I was like, hey, like, have you tried this? Because obviously we talk in the break room, like, oh, I'm experiencing this. Oh, I'm feeling that. And I was like, hey, try this. Try unwinding in this way. Try leaving work at the door in that way. Try this style of meal prep. I'll go over my 6 steps. I'll outline it for you in a second. And when they came back and said, hey, that was so simple, and hey, it really worked. And I was like, yes, it does. Like, it does for me and it does for you. That's awesome. So we just kind of like tick, tick, tick. Like, it wasn't just working for me. And I think that was really important. And that was when I realized, hey, this needs to become a resource that we can give nurses. And that was about midway through 2022. So it was about 2.5 years of discovery and, like, really struggling with, how am I going to manage my burnout, because my leadership won't help me, or don't have the resources or the capacity to help me. So I published and wrote that book. So I wrote that book and then published it at the beginning of last year. So 2023, like January 2023. And so it's called Nursing the Nurse, the Ultimate 6-Step Guide to Beating Nurse Burnout. And the 6 steps is, we start at the real basics. Have you heard of the Wheel of Life?
The Wheel of Life?
Yeah. It's like a very common self-care tool that many like self-care gurus use. Long story short, it's a wheel model that you use to, like, kind of score where you're at in different areas of your life. So your health, your wealth, your relationships, things like that. Very, very popular. However, I was like, we need to tailor this to nurses. So we need to tailor it to your
Mm.
ability to do exercise, your ability to leave work at the door, your ability to get quality sleep, things like that. And I created a mini wheel of life for nurses. So in the first chapter, we go over what are your goals? Where are you at? Just kind of taking stock, because there's no point in saying like, oh, I need to do this and that if you don't know where you are and what you're working towards.
Mm.
The next step we go into, I always say, and I might have touched on this earlier, is becoming self-aware is what will lead to self-care. Again, as this kind of incorporates that first step of, okay, where am I? Where do I want to go? I'm aware of it now. Now I can take the first step and I can find the resource. And then we go into really important stuff, your nutrition, how to make sure that you're still nourishing your body in a sustainable way, not just the stress eating way or the wine unwind or the, caffeine high and
Yeah.
everything in between. It's about how you do that sustainably. So how do you nourish your body overnight when you're doing a night shift? Or how do you make sure that when you're working those late, early, that you're prepared? Then we look into your sleep. How do you create a sleep environment that's conducive to sleep? We go into your habits. So not just your eating and sleep habits, but everything else. So drinking water, how you talk to your family, everything from there. And then my absolute favorite one is step number 6, and it's one of the, and I'm sure we're gonna go into like practical steps in a minute. And I would love to share a little system that I use.
You can go ahead. Go right ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
step 6 is about learning how to unwind, the skill of unwinding. And in there, I share in depth how to do a brain dump. But essentially what a brain dump is you take everything in your head, get it out, either on paper or on typing, whatever you use, and you create your to-do list from there. We then go into like scheduling and making sure that you actually get that done. But the main aim of the brain dump is to empty your head so that you don't feel so clouded and flustered and overwhelmed by everything that's going on in here, and getting it out. And yeah, it's just a fantastic way to kind of take stock of, okay, I'm okay. And then going, okay, this is objective. This is okay. Let me deal with this trauma that I experienced or this frustration and get rid of it. And now I'm left with what I need to get done, and I can actually be productive rather than feeling like I'm treading water and I'm not getting anywhere.
Amazing. I look forward to getting a copy of that book of yours. Yeah. We'll share the details on the recording on how everyone can get it. Is it for public consumption?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So at the moment I don't have I'm working towards getting it into a print on demand.
Okay.
So at the moment it's all digital. But yeah,
Okay.
in the near future, I'm hoping that we'll actually be able to get physical books, because I don't know about you, I love holding a book when I'm reading it. But yeah, at the moment it's fully available digitally.
Yeah. I know my wife
Yeah.
would love it.
Yeah, awesome.
She loves reading books. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Whenever we pass through an airport, she has to come out with one book.
I'm
That's
guilty
how
too.
much she loves. Yeah. That's how much she loves reading.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So those are the steps that you came up with. What would you like to see the institutions or organizations implementing to prevent this toxicity and promoting a healthier work environment?
Yeah. Well, as important as it is to learn this stuff from the get-go, nurses forget, people forget. When you are under the pump, it's very easy to just fall back on your default, which is often the unresourceful things, like the wine, like the over shopping, like the breaking each other down. So it's really important to get refreshers. And I think that from an organizational point of view, it's absolutely their responsibility to be looking after their nurses, by providing, or even their staff in general, that they're providing resources that's not just 3 counseling sessions per year. That is practical. How can I overcome this? How do I identify it? And whether that's in a form of a workshop, or I know for many hospitals we've got our yearly mandatory training of like our hand hygiene and our CPR and other competencies. Why not make self-care an annual competency or a 6 monthly competency that this is the skill of self-care? it's some simple things that won't cost an arm and a leg, but it will make all the difference, because we're leaving. I see nurses leaving the industry all the time because they either think they're not cut out for it, or they think this is the
They're
only
just
way
tired.
that I can get. Yeah, this is the only way that I can move past it.
Yeah, shame.
There is an in between, and many
But they still
nurses
carry
don't
that
know it.
with their whole life,
Yeah,
eh?
absolutely. I always say, it's funny. I always say that burnout is going to happen over and over again if you keep going over and over again and doing the same thing. And what I mean by that is, if you imagine the journey, I guess, of the shift worker or a high stress job, you're going to come to rapids in a boat. You're on a boat, you're on a river. You're going to come to rapids. The waters are shaky. It's scary. It's awful. Water's going to be coming into your raft. So what do we do when we're leaving the industry or we just quit? We are essentially picking up our raft, walking back upstream, going back in the water, and expecting the rapids will have disappeared by the time we get back to it. Okay, so if we are equipped with the skill of self-care, of identifying, what are the signs and how can I, navigate through this, like almost like a rapids manual, so to speak. At the end of the rapids, once you're through it, there's calm waters. And it doesn't mean that you're only going to have one lot of rapid. It's going to happen over and over and over again, because you're going to come to a new one and a new one and a new one. But instead of just coming back to the same one over and over again, which is ridiculous, once you think about it that way, that's just that's the difference between equipping yourself with the knowledge and the skill versus just running away.
Yeah, that's profound. That's profound. So earlier you said that you presented this, you suggested this to your fellow employees, and they came back to you happy that it is working, and
Yes.
that was the start of your journey.
Yeah.
But now let's talk about those that have not had any contact with you.
So many, the entire world.
Yeah, so just so many. But we're happy NMP Talk Show is making contact,
Yeah.
Yeah. As long as they watch the show, they'll know what to do.
Yeah.
So for the benefit of those that are watching my show, what strategies can employees use to cope with toxic culture while they're still remaining productive?
Look, one of the biggest things I talk about is, there's three actually, but one of them is learning how to say no more often, but doing it in a resourceful, in a healthily selfish way. So there's a difference between being selfish and being rude, and the in between being healthily selfish. So what I mean by that is, you're setting boundaries that is going to benefit both you and the team and your patients. I should say all of them, not just both. It's there's three parties involved, because when we are selfish, we can often be that whole apathetic kind of person, and take that approach where we're like, no, deal with it. Or we could go the other way, where we are just over giving, and like we just feel absolutely guilty when we say no, and we're like, okay, yes, I'll pick up a double shift, yes, I'll pick up an extra shift, yes, I'll work overtime, and we're left with nothing. So becoming healthily selfish is saying, I picked up a double shift 3 days ago, I haven't recovered from it yet. It's safer for me, and it's safer for you, and it's safer for our patients that I say no. And when you say it like that, it's very hard for people to try and guilt trip you, because that's another toxic culture thing, is we guilt trip each other.
Yeah.
And especially the nursing species, I call us, it's very easy to play on their emotions and make them feel guilty and make them feel like they're letting down their team if they say no. And that's not okay. That's very toxic. It's a very, very dangerous road to go down. But learning how to say that boundary in a calm, graceful, but firm way is what's going to make the difference in being able to put that distance and start to separate work and life, and having that, you need to separate them. You can't have them all intertwined.
That actually brings me to my next question to you. setting boundaries.
Mm.
I know being a nurse, a doctor, well, you can't carry your work home, isn't it?
Mm.
Because your work needs to be done in an institution, in the hospital, in a clinic. So when you're off, you're off.
Yeah.
But are there any chances that one can still carry their work home?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Mm.
Again, often when I was in my state of burnout, I would call in to work and be like, "Oh, I forgot this, I forgot that. I hope this patient's okay. Did that lady, did my coworker manage to, get someone to fill the spot? I'm so sorry, I had to say no. Like, oh, like maybe I should come in. It's just, yes, you can absolutely
Mm.
bring it home. And so in my book and in my, I've got online courses and communities and things, and where we talk about I don't know if you've heard of the third space. It's a book.
Mm.
It's another book, and I can't remember the author's name, but he's also a doctor, and he talks about creating a third space. And what that is the space from one activity to the space of the next, and so for example, work and personal home, and creating that between that a third space where you just take a second
Yeah.
to reflect or to set your intention.
Yeah.
And that just helps you to separate them and set that boundary for yourself that you can begin to go, okay,
Wow. Is
I've
it Baba?
Baba, no, I want to say Dr. Adam something.
Okay.
Hold on, I'm gonna find it for you now.
Yeah.
Third oh, space. Let's see. Adam Fraser, Dr. Adam
Adam
Fraser.
Fraser.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
excellent book. And that's one of the many strategies that I use. Unfortunately, it is not tailored to the shift worker. So again, I've taken those principles and tailored it to the nurse. But
Shift work. Okay.
excellent resource if you're looking to just learn a little bit more about creating a third space and leaving work at the door or leaving home at the work entrance. I mean, obviously, when you're a parent, it's very hard to leave work, to leave home at work, outside of work, because we're often like checking in on them or anything like that. And obviously, there is room and space and reasonable reasons, for lack of better
Yeah.
words, that
Yeah.
you would be checking in on your family. Like, if you've got a sick kid or something, that's completely different to bringing in. I kid you not, I used to know every intricate detail of my coworker's divorce, the proceedings, because they would not be able to leave her home at home and work at work. So it was just a mangled mess. And so, when you're hearing about someone's divorce all the time and you're trying to focus on the fact that your patient's crashing or whatever, obviously it's not happening at once, but you've got your head's just full with this person's baggage. Now, I want to quickly just preface by saying, of course, when you're in high stress environments, when you're working with people 12-hour shifts, 5 days a week, of course, you're going to learn a little bit more about them, but there's a difference. There is a very fine balance. So yeah, it is.
That's the key word, balance there.
Yes, 100%.
All right. Sure. You've said a mouthful. And
I'm a bit of a talker, aren't I?
and I'm happy you are. I'm happy you are. That was always my challenge when I started my podcast, that I normally don't talk a lot, and I would need guests that really talk,
Yeah.
Yeah. And there you are, coming to my
well,
rescue.
you're welcome. Teamwork.
Teamwork, that's true. Okay, you spoke about when you started with your career, and you were getting burnout, and then you went to your supervisor there. I'm relating this in terms of bringing out this quality of communication. So communication is very important.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most of us, we don't know how it works. We can't communicate. And the moment we know how to communicate, the moment we start dealing with so many things, we're avoiding issues, that might come up.
Yeah.
Now, my question to you is, The role of open communication in addressing issues of toxicity in
Mm,
workplace.
mm.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Look, I think definitely it comes down to when you're approaching, like when a young nurse or any nurse for that matter is approaching
Mm,
senior staff, they need to be equipped with knowing how to create a safe space and a
mm,
useful space. And what I mean by safe and useful, safe meaning they can come to you with an issue and you will hear what they have to say before interrupting them, before defending yourself and saying, "Oh, I'm
mm.
just a middleman," or, you know, "I've got my work as well." Just creating a space where they can share their
Open up.
concerns,
Mm,
open up, identify where their struggles, and you can actually make an accurate, let's call it a diagnosis. So you can actually make an
mm,
accurate assessment of what's going on for that person. Does it
mm,
look like, does it sound like and look like they are overwhelmed? Does it sound and look like they are lacking in skills? What is missing for them? And then thinking, okay, I'm the senior staff here. Um, Here are some resources, and that's where the organizational resources come in very, very handy. But also just having those skills for yourself, like equipping yourself with, this works for me, try
mm.
this. At least just giving them something, or being completely honest and say, I actually don't know. Let's go find out together. It
Yeah,
sounds
yeah.
so basic because it is. We just don't think about it because we just want to get on with it. Um, so that's safe. And then useful is that whole let's do it together part. And let's actually find it out. And if I don't know, it's okay that I don't know, but I've still created a space that you feel comfortable sharing with me.
Mm,
And I think that's really important. Is that's what's going to create open communication from the bottom up and the top down. Um,
ah,
and
true.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I agree with you. But then
Mm,
how can they gauge the effectiveness? How can they measure
mm,
it?
mm. Look, I think there's not really like numbers here, but
Mm,
um, I think one thing that we'll notice is you will have a lot higher staff retention.
yeah.
Staff retention is huge in the nursing field. I'm sure there are other areas as well, but
Mm,
we've got nurses leaving the industry left, right, and center for the reasons that I mentioned previously. Um,
mm,
and that leads to understaffing, it leads to inexperienced staff, it leads to poorer patient outcomes and care, and poorer teamwork and ability to, and like, because when you're having to work with a new staff member over and over again because they're
mm.
just such a high rollover, you don't get to
Yeah. You
build
get
a
frustrated too, huh?
yeah, you get frustrated, you don't build relationships, so you don't know how that person
Mm,
works or they don't know how you work. And many hospitals here in Australia, and I've talked to people in UK, in USA, Canada, it happens everywhere, New Zealand. People hospitals and aged care facilities, GP practices, they're running on
mm.
agency nurses, which means that nurse comes in for one shift, maybe two, and then they're gone,
Yeah.
and you might not see them for a few
So you don't
weeks,
build the
maybe even a few
culture.
months.
Mm, mm,
Exactly, exactly. So I think something measurable would be staff retention. The next thing you'd probably notice is that you'd have less sick calls. And what I mean by less sick calls, not because people aren't getting sick, but because they're not calling in sick just to get away from
to get
work.
away. Mm,
Just, I used to run out of sick days because I just didn't want to come into work because I didn't feel rested or I felt anxious. And so
yeah.
I wasn't, whilst personal leave or sick leave, you can use it for whatever you want.
Mm,
There's the resourceful ways of using it. And calling in sick because you're struggling to cope and because you don't have support is not one of them. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Sure. So let's shift focus a little bit.
Mm,
We talked about toxicity in the work environment,
mm,
but how can we move or move into prioritizing mental health and well-being in
mm, mm,
workplaces?
mm. I think it really comes, it's actually, I want to almost say the exact same thing that I said earlier about creating a safe space and
Mm-hmm.
a helpful environment. That's definitely one part, is when people feel heard, they are able to cope better, I think.
Open up.
They're able to open up. Exactly. They're able to let go of that burden, that build up, that, we're bubbling under the surface when we're just not dealing with it or not getting it out. And so that's what leads to our mental health. But also, again, just bringing in that layers of education and learning the skills that's needed to deal with the trauma, to deal with the abuse. So what I mean by trauma is when we've got patients passing away, when we've got, there's nothing like a feeling of having a family member or a friend mourn either the health or the life that has been lost, of a loved one, and not being able to do anything about it. That's traumatic, if you don't know how to deal with it. And other things is like the abuse. So often family members and patients, they're in pain, or they have, they obviously care for their family members, so they want the best from you, and so they take it out on you. And it's not always because they are horrible people, it's because they are also under stress. And so that, physical, emotional, verbal abuse, again, it's like you deal with those things and you need to have an outlet. I'm definitely an advocate for self-care, but there is also a line where we need to start looking for external help. There's only so much you can do yourself. And so that's why it's important to create that safe space. And when it gets to a point where you need professional help, knowing that it's okay to be on the other side of the clipboard, because nurses in particular don't like being on the other side of the clipboard. They think that they should just keep it all together and they should be perfect and they should. It's okay. It's not nice, but it's okay. And if you seek help sooner rather than later, it comes back to that whole prevention versus cure thing.
Sure. Jeanelle, thank you so much for imparting that wisdom with us. And
yeah, absolutely.
And I'm hoping the professionals that will be watching the show will gain one or two things, they can take away and actually implement in their workplaces, because we need them. We love them, and we care for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we find them at their optimal levels, I mean, we'll be taken good care of, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But thank you ever so much.
Yeah.
Maybe
thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, as a closing remarks, anything that you would like to share?
Look, one thing I always share, well, more often than not, share at the end of conversations, great conversations like this, is it's just reiterating that self-care is a skill. And if you don't know self-care, or if you're unsure, you can absolutely find a system for yourself. You can. But it's so much easier to find it from someone who's been before. So finding something that works so that you don't have to do the trial and error is one thing. And so it's okay to look for help is what I'm trying to say there. And the second one is, yes, it's hard, but every day that you choose resilience, it'll get better. And you'll reach a new challenge, you'll choose resilience, and it'll get better again. It's like going through those rapids, going through that, and finding your guide, getting that self-care, that skill, absolutely is going to make the difference.
Well, thank you so much, Jeanelle. There's nothing more I can add on that. The wisdom has been imparted. The professional has spoken. I was just there, being part of the conversation.
It's been awesome.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed the conversation. I've learned a lot as well. And
Fantastic.
We're looking forward to your book, Nursing the Nurse, isn't it?
Nursing the Nurse, yes.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Once you got it on print or in any way that we can get it, please let me know, and I'll also share on this recording with my people there. Yeah,
100%. I mean, if you're looking for it, I'm always available for a chat on Facebook. I've got a fantastic Nursing the Nurse Facebook group where we constantly share support. And if you're looking for like some free stuff just to kind of dip your toes in, if you go to nursingthenurse.com, I've got some great resources on there. And if you just want to shoot me an email, we can always say hello. I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. We'll definitely hear from me. Yeah.
Fantastic.
All
Thanks,
right.
Neil.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone that will be watching this show, and we hope that the information that you got here will improve your life, will improve your workplace. We're not saying this is where you get your answers to your problems. But we're saying this is where you get your information. Take this information, use it in your life, improve it. And if you need to seek professional help, please do that. And there's nothing that, like, sitting at home without any help and just staying by yourself. But now, this is where we wrap up our show. And thank you for joining NMP Talk Show. We hope that we will see you on our next show. My name is Morapedi, the host of NMP Talk Show, signing out. You need internet? You need